folks, here we are, gale force winds, back at Central Minex or Minex, Peter? Minex 2023. Yep. I'm here with our second guest. His name is Peter Dimmell, and I'm extremely excited to have Peter on the podcast today, right from the floor of the trade show. Peter, could you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Okay, I'm Peter Dimmell. I'm a geologist, but I also consider myself a prospector. I've worked with prospectors all my life in the mineral exploration field, and because of that, I've had a lot of success. I attribute a lot of that to the fact that I did work with prospectors all the way through.
So is it because there's some sort of a inspirational, what is it?
It's just, I've worked with prospectors in New Brunswick and Newfoundland primarily, but they're just different people. They see things that the rest of us don't necessarily see. I consider myself a pretty good prospector, and I've learned from the people that I've worked with, guys like Al Keats here in Newfoundland, the Keats family overall, the Stairs, cousins of the Keats. In New Brunswick, a guy by the name of George Murphy, who was these guys go in the field and they walk over areas that we've all walked over, and they find things. And that's the positive part of it. And working with them has really helped me as a geologist. I'm the guy that's supposed to be saying, okay, this is what we're looking for, etc. But a lot of cases, I don't know what we're looking for. We're looking for what we find. A good example of that's Voisey's Bay. Voisey's Bay, they were looking for diamonds. And what did they find? They found one of the biggest copper-nickel deposits, or nickel-copper deposits, with cobalt in the world.
On that point, that was in the 80s, the late 80s, right? 89, 90s?
93, 94 was when they really came out with it. But yes, it was in that thing. They were flying around Labrador, Al Chislett and Chris Verbisky, flying around Labrador, actually sampling the rivers for minerals, what we call kimberlite indicator minerals, for diamonds. And they flew over a rusty hill that lots of other people had flown over, and they never stopped that. Mind you, a geologist with the Geological Survey of Newfoundland had actually sampled some of the gossan, which is the rusty stuff on top. Think back in 1986 or 87, and nobody paid any attention.
Look, I'm coming at your industry, I'm an advertising guy. I find it fascinating listening to you. You said hundreds of people have flown over Voisey's Bay, but those two gentlemen, and not only flown over, you said someone actually went down and sampled it.
They actually flew over it one day, noted it on the thing, and they were doing something else at the time, and they marked it on their map, and they came back a few days later, just flying with a helicopter, of course. And they landed on what they call Discovery Hill. The rest is history.
Yeah. Is Newfoundland geologically a treasure trove like this? Could you summarize it like that?
It is, but it's interesting. We've always had a problem in Newfoundland, and it was actually Hamish Sandeman talked about it this morning in the first talk at this conference. Newfoundland has been restricted because of two things. Because of its just the logistics, because it wasn't, the interior of the island was not open like a lot of the parts of Canada. You couldn't get there. Right. Everything went around the outside, the coastal regions, the railway went around the outside, didn't go across the middle. So it didn't get opened up in the interior for a long time. Then there was a concession system. So you didn't have prospectors. Concessions, these were a big area of ground that was given to one company. And some of them employed prospectors, but a lot of them didn't. So there was no independent prospectors like you would have in the rest of Canada, the Yukon Gold Rush and places like that. So you didn't have that. So it's only in the last probably 30, 40 years that we've sort of caught up. And I'll give you an example about this particular thing. Central Minex, I lived in Gander from 1969 to 82 when I moved to New Brunswick, and then I moved back to St. John's in 89. I worked with Noranda Exploration. A lot of these gold showings that are now being looked at by the companies working in the Central Mineral Belt, as we call it, were found by Noranda, and they were found by Noranda prospectors primarily. But that really started in the early 80s, 83, 84, 85. Follow-up of geochemical work showed there was gold in the area. and followed up actually from, again, a geological survey of Newfoundland guy by the name of Frank Blackwood, who discovered the first gold showing near Jonathan's Pump. And that's what twigged a lot of us to look at it, and we kept going from there. We used to leave Gander here and go west every Monday, and we come back every Friday. We went across where the major gold zone is along the Appleton Fault Zone. We never knew it was there. So.
You, from what I can understand, you're one of the prospectors that found that particular.
There was myself, Kevin Keats, and Alan Keats, and they, Al particularly, did a lot of looking at the data. And Noranda had data which showed there were high soil values to the north of the Trans-Canada Highway on the Appleton Fault Zone. We didn't call it the Appleton Fault Zone. Nobody really thought about it at the time. But Noranda had been working south of the Trans-Canada Highway on a showing called the Knob and a bunch of others. For some reason, they didn't go north, but they had done some preliminary work, put a grid in, which cut lines, and then they'd sampled the soils, and they had some high geochemical samples. One day I got a call from Al saying, can you stake some claims over that? The ground was coming open. Now there's a history why the ground didn't come open. There's a real history behind that. But when it came open, we staked in 1998. And we optioned it to various companies up until 2016. I think the Newfound was the 7th company that came in on that property. In 2016, we optioned it to them. In 2019, they drilled 10 holes. The first hole got 92 grams of gold, which is 3 ounces a ton, over 19 meters, so over 60 feet, which was probably one of the best drill holes for gold in the world at that time.
Ever?
Well, that year.
That year, okay.
But certainly it would be up the top of anyone ever found. I mean, these are phenomenal grades, right?
So prior to that drill hole going in, did you and your prospecting partners have any idea it was that rich?
There were some indications. It was on one company that had been in 2003, a company called Candente, had drilled a hole on the Lotto, which is one of the zones they're looking at now. And that had an intersection of, I think it was 2.5 meters of about 50 grams or something like that, which is still 1.5 ounces.
Right.
But nobody seemed to pay attention on it. Again, I think because it was in Newfoundland. You don't have gold. Right?
It's amazing. You're so matter of fact talking about this. What was it like when you got the results back, though? You must have nearly
it
fell
was
over.
Private, when they drilled that.
Yeah.
It was a private company.
Right.
And unlike a public company, they could talk about it. They drilled it, I think, on a Thursday or a Friday. Greg Matheson, who's the COO here for Newfound, they drilled it, and he and another geologist, they called me and said, we want to get some core thing. We hit this big zone. We want to get some of the core polished. And I have a guy in St. John's here in the area that can polish core for me. And they sent it in to me, and it happened to be the same time as our mineral resources review, which we have in November every year in St. John's, between the CIM Newfoundland and the government. And anyway, they sent it in to me on the bus. I picked it up, and there was a piece of quartz like this long, the white rock quartz. Yep. Visible gold all through it. I mean, I walk around with this thing, and guys were like, I mean, it just winked, but that's what started the whole Newfoundland gold rush.
Right.
It just, people said, well, the thing, and it's interesting because actually we just, when I'm also a director of Sokoman Gold, and we have the Moosehead property out near the Beta Spare turnoff. One of the things that actually peaked some information thing there a year or two before that, we drilled the first hole when we optioned that property. Tim Froud was the one behind it. We got 11 meters of 46 grams. That all of a sudden created a big thing. So the Newfound one on top of that really just said, well, look, they're finding it here, they're finding it there. How many places is it going to be in Newfoundland? So now we've got it on the south coast, we've got it out to the coast here, we've got it over there, you know.
It brings up this question to someone who doesn't know your industry. With the gold rush, how do you as a prospecting group, how does the government, how do you manage what's happening now then? If there's gold here, gold here, gold here, does that mean all the eyeballs are on, and are they already claimed, and people are now paying attention to their claims? Is that
when a gold rush starts? When people see the potential, things that were peripheral to the main showings are now staked. There's now 100 plus companies working in this province.
100
mineral exploration, 100. And they said today they're projecting about 250 million in exploration expenditures this year. And that's up from 30, 40, well, in our low years, we'd have 30, 40 million. So you can see how it goes. Now, one company I forgot was Marathon Gold.
Yes.
Marathon, obviously, with the Valentine Lake thing, they've got 5 million ounces and counting. And some people say it's probably going to be 10 million before they're finished. So they're heading towards production. But again, there's this lack of belief in it on the mainland. You know, it's for some reason Newfoundland will not have a big deposit. We will not have it. We had Hope Brook, which is over 1 million ounces even right now, and that's after they took 800,000 out of it a number of years ago.
Yeah.
So we have, I think, right now about 5 deposits that are 1 million ounces or better. And more to be found.
And they're quite accessible, like
it depends where they are.
Is that right?
That sort of thing. But I mean, Newfoundland is overall very accessible. There's a great video that's been done by Newfound flying up the Appleton Lake.
I saw that.
And I mean, it shows where things are, and it's I mean, both sides of Trans-Canada Highway, and there's roads going up and down. And there were existing roads in a lot of cases. Right now, of course, there's been more for drilling. Right?
Yeah.
So. Yeah.
How excited are you, Peter, about the industry at this stage of your life?
Well, I am getting older. I wake up some mornings and think, how in the hell are we managing to do this? How lucky am I? I mean, because it is the type of thing that we've been looking for. As I did say, I'm a director of Sokoman. Sokoman Benton, just 2 years ago, discovered lithium.
What's Sokoman stand for?
Sokoman Minerals. It's another
Minerals.
company.
Okay,
I have a tube that says Sokoman. I change it over.
Okay, yes,
with
good.
This one. But we discovered this. We were looking for gold down in that area, and on ground we had staked. Well, what we found were pegmatites. Pegmatites are the rock that have lithium. They have spodumene and they have other minerals, but we've got great lithium cesium possibilities down there, and we'll be starting drilling there in another couple of weeks. Again, this will be our third phase of that, and we're getting interest from around the world on those prospects down there. First time they've been discovered in Newfoundland.
Is that right?
Yeah.
So, like, your phone must ring a lot, does it?
No, it doesn't actually.
No?
I'm semi-retired,
Yeah.
so, you know, I'm doing my own thing. I work with people and that. But I get involved with things like this, and I work a lot with prospectors still, just to help, you know, to help them if I can, mentor more than anything else.
Well, that's nice, you know, to give back like that. How does that work? There's a lot of students, as we talk, walking around. Is there an opportunity for a student to become a prospector, you know, say, how does that work?
Well, prospecting is actually a great way to get into it. A good example is Brian Dalton, who's the CEO of Altius Minerals.
Yes.
Brian started off in university when he was doing, actually, I think before he went to university, prospecting. He's from Cape Royal. He worked around, he got into prospecting, he staked claims and auctioned them and everything. Actually, Brian and his company were the first ones into the Moosehead property, which is the one that Sokoman struck. So there's a good example. You don't have to do much. You can do it on weekends.
Yeah.
You can prospect on weekends. You can prospect when it's nice weather. I know people that got into it as a pastime are now doing it full time. I know a bank manager that retired said he wish he'd done it 20 years earlier because he just loves it. Right?
And you're out in the environment.
Right. Yeah.
Exercising.
Yeah.
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 I got to ask you about that. Here we are, it's 2023. The concept of walking over ground seems a little bit antiquated to me. Like, isn't there technology that would scan the ground by flying over it?
It is interesting because, yes, they're saying that. I mean, what do you call it? Artificial intelligence is being used a lot.
Yes.
We use a lot of other surveys. What happens in Newfoundland, what happens in most places now is the governments do this groundwork. So they'll fly the magnetic surveys, which gives you an idea that magnetic survey shows the difference between magnetism, different things. What it'll do, it'll show faults,
right?
Which is one of the things we look for when we're looking for gold. You have to have the structures provide the pathway for the fluids to come out that deposit the gold. Okay. You don't necessarily find the gold on the structure. You find it on what we call splays or second, third order.
Well, thank you for clarifying that, because I'm sure many of our people watching this, a lot of business people, have no idea how that works. But
so you look for those things, then you go in and you prospect those areas, and it might be an area nobody's ever looked at for some reason. A good example is this area. I mean, nobody was looking here until somebody started finding gold, which was Noranda. And that would have been, like I said, 90 to 83, 84, 85.
But you started poking around in the data yourself and then said...
No, this was Al, actually.
Al Keats is the one brought you in, right?
Al's always done that. Al, I give Al and Kevin were the ones that called me and said, look, we'll go stake some claims, we'll go in on it third each.
Yeah.
No, I really benefited from it, obviously. No, you know, I'm sure they'll tell you. I mean, I helped them because I went and looked at some of the stuff and I had ideas, and we worked at it together, and most of the companies that came in, we worked with them. We all worked with them, right? So, and we still do. I'm still working on, you know, with Newfound a little bit too.
This is going to reveal how rudimentary my knowledge is, but do you actually have like a little shovel? Do you scrape? What do you do? Just give us a little picture of that. It's so interesting.
Most of the time, I carry a what we call a geo tool.
Right.
And a geo tool has a hammer, and the other side it has a scraper thing. So you use a scraper for taking the moss off the rocks, and you use the hammer for breaking. Okay. It's about that long. I guess it's about 2 foot long. You can get different sizes. And then you look at the rocks, and you look for alteration. You look for something. If a rock, I tell this when I teach. I also teach some of the prospecting course, or I have in the past. When you see, and this is prospecting, rudimentary prospecting. If you're in an area, it's all red rocks, and there's a green one. Why is it green? Go look at it. And that's the sort of thing the prospectors do, right? If you see white quartz, everybody generally knows what white quartz is, but that's what the gold is in here, in this area in central Newfoundland. Yeah. So that's what you look for.
Just want to make a quick announcement on lunch. Apparently they're having some issues with the elevator in the building for getting food down here. So lunch at 12:30 is going to be served upstairs in the cafeteria. So you can go up there and get your lunch there and bring it down here and carry on, but just a little bit of a change from the original plan. So thank you.
Peter, as you're talking, you know what? You're going to laugh at this. I'm thinking about what it must be like to go to a beach with you. Most people go to a beach to relax. You must, like especially a Newfoundland beach, are you constantly maybe you don't even go to a beach, I don't know. Would you be the type that would be looking at all the rocks?
Well, it's funny you say that because we just came back. We spent 2 weeks in Mexico, Cabo San Lucas, and then we went on a cruise to the Caribbean. Yeah. So every time I get off, I go on shore. I'm always looking at the rocks.
I bet.
And it's interesting. Puerto Vallarta, for example, I found pumice. Actually, when my granddaughter was with me at the time, she brought me this rock, and I said, "That's pumice." I started looking around, and pumice is volcanic rock that floats because it's full of air.
Yeah.
So it blows out of the volcano and lands in water and it floats into shore. So all at some beaches, I found pumice on 2 beaches now in Mexico, and I found pumice in Santorini in the Greek islands.
Is that right?
But again, I do look at those.
Yeah.
It just, I like to know what things, and of course, as I drive, it's frustrating, I'm sure, for my people. Because I'd like to look at it. A lot of times I'm going too fast to worry about it, but I'm noticing quartz, I'm noticing alteration changes, as we call it. So, yeah, it's just what I do, I guess.
Well, I'm glad that you do it, because I think what you and your partners have done is something special. The energy here, and you're only my second guest, but the people are really energized by what's happening in this industry, and I think that Newfoundland is definitely going to be a beneficiary of that. I know Norm Mercer talked about the number of jobs that are going to be generated. I mean, this is economic growth and economic stability for this province, is it not?
It is, and one of the things I said to my wife driving out yesterday, I said I never thought that I would ever see a mineral conference in Gander. We had our base here. Noranda's base was here in Gander from 1969 till about the mid-80s. and yet we didn't work here. We worked west of here, very seldom east of here, because we're different rock types and different things. Now, there's potential to the east too, especially in the Burin Peninsula and what we call the Avalon zone out on that east side. But it just was just different. It's where we worked and we went. So I'm really glad to see it. I was at the university earlier this week for the GAC Newfoundland section. One of the profs there said to me, a well-respected, world-renowned professor, said to me, he said, that central Newfoundland is like the Abitibi. It's like the Timmins, Kirkland Lake area. 50 years from now, they'll still be finding new deposits. So, that gives you an idea of what the potential is here.
Well, folks, I'm actually getting goosebumps, Peter, with what you just said. I have two young men, actually they're out here with me, 19 and 16. To think that there will be 50 years from now still finding deposits is extremely exciting. I don't have much more to say. It's just wonderful to be here. Gale Force Winds is all about positivity, and I tell you, it's something special to sit with you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.